So for the past 3 or 4 months, you guys know that I've been into this on-road carpet thing running in a GT12 class. And what I've been running mainly has been an Xray, the X12 22 and the 23. We can go over the differences between the two in a little bit. Now, Xray just announced that the 24 version is going to be coming out. And quite honestly, there's not a lot of changes that you won't be able to just add a couple parts to this 23 to make it a 24. So there might be some used deals for you out there if you're looking to get into the civilized racing of GT12. So I'm Chad, this is the Dorky and 40 RC channel. We're going to make you faster today, and let's talk about the GT12 class, specifically this Xray 2023 edition. So I've got a race coming up this weekend at our local track. We're going to try to run on-road there. It's a smaller track than what you've seen in some of my previous videos, and a little bit of differences that we'll have to probably make to the car, especially when it comes to like gearing and stuff. But with the release of that 24, I figured it would be a good time to kind of go over everything on the 23 to see if you want to go ahead and maybe go for one of these. So the 2024 is going to come with a couple options here in the US that a lot of things you can do already yourself. For example, it's going to come with a stiffer center spring. It's going to come with a 3D printed bumper, which we already have clearly right here. They are going to change these molded spring retainers inside there that are your pod inside dampers. They're going to change those to metal versus the composite material that kind of flakes and kind of like can get kind of knurled up a little bit when you're messing around with your tweak screws to set your balancing on your car a little bit more. Now, one thing you might notice is that I've got the carbon fiber setup. I've got a carbon fiber chassis and pod, and really the whole reason is just to try to keep the weight down for the GT12 class. You usually have a minimum weight of about 700 grams, and then your body has to weigh 50, so you're looking at a total all-up weight of 750. They are weighed independently when you go to bigger races. So different things that you add to the car can also affect the weight. Basically what kind of body post that you're using, what kind of servo that you're using. Most of the 1S speed controllers and all that stuff is kind of the same. You can see that we've changed out the thinner gauge wire just to basically take away any influence on the pod shock and the flexibility of that. Now, when it comes to the differences from the 22 to the 23, I'm not sure if all the differences really make much of a difference for a GT12 person. Someone who's probably way more experienced, like the Dr. Alexander Hagberg, could probably explain that. He's done a lot of great videos for Xray and on his channel about his 12 scale stuff, but of course he races like the super fast, I don't even know what he puts in those things. 4-turn, 5-turn motors, I don't know. But like those guys are just totally gnarly. So I'm going to come to this, of course, from the GT12 perspective. I've also ran the CRC CK25, which is a great car in itself. The whole reason why I gravitated toward Xray a little bit more is, for me, it's a little bit more beginner friendly. It's got great documentation and everything else. And with these 12 scale things, a millimeter can be a mile, and a half a millimeter can, well, be a half mile. You really need to they set out in their instruction manual and say, if you want this much droop on your front, then you're going to need this many spacers here. Or if you want this ride height here, then you're going to need this many of these spacers here. And it's really good. Takes all of the thought out of it. You just use your ride height gauge, check things out, and if you're off by a little bit, you either add, remove, you adjust your main ride height here with your center shock by winding it up and down, and then you can, of course, change the length of the shock and all that kind of fun stuff. So 23 to me has been pretty cool, but I think maybe it is, again, a little overdone. So we'll talk about some differences between the 23 and the 22. So the big thing that they did when they went from the 22 to the 23 pretty much every part on the bottom here got like a makeover. So the chassis, the pod, all the parts that connect the pod housing and all that stuff back here, all kind of got like a low CG type of a makeover, and also got a little bit of like angle designs and stuff done to it. So that way, if you hit walls and stuff like that, you're not gonna like disrupt the car and take it out of tweak as much, bend things around and stuff. Because remember, these things actually come with aluminum chassis, a full-size aluminum chassis for US, and then a Flex aluminum chassis with some cutouts in it for European. And then they come with some other slight differences as far as spring tensions and everything. So it's always important to remember that these are not really built to run GT12, even though they do. There's nothing really specific about a GT12 car. It's a 12 scale pan car that you kind of scale down. Getting back to the differences between the 22 and the 23, one thing that you really want to do a lot is, keep up on your oils and stuff like that. The 23 actually moved these side damper tubes up top, which you take apart and you put lube inside there, and they're way easier to get to versus the 22, where they're actually underneath this top brace right here. So you kind of got to move the battery around or take the battery off, pop them off, get rid of them that way. So it's a big time creature comfort that just makes things a little bit easier to work on. So that's one of the big differences that I like with the 23 over the 22. That's pretty much it. Everything else I could kind of take it or leave it. Now are always working on their battery mounting system. You can see right here that they've got a battery post up here on the front that your shock can connect to. And then you got these little tabs here where your battery actually is held down. And this works really good. You can see here is where you can actually make those differences. The other thing that they did on the 23 versus the 22 is they gave you a few more hole options on everything. We've always had the ability, it's hard to see with these front holes, that you've got a short wheelbase, or you can choose this slightly a longer hole in front of it for the long wheelbase. So they gave you some more cutouts back here. They also gave you some more options back here for your pod to get it a little bit away from the car or get it a little bit closer. So we've got those chassis changes. We've got the LCG redesign on every part, new housing, different kind of spacers to raise up your rear ride height. They redesigned this top plate here to allow the shock and the side dampers to mount to the top. They did a little bit of changes, I think, to the tweak screws. Nothing really up front. They kind of changed some of their base setup settings. But yeah, the 22 and the 23 are pretty dang close. And if you wanted to convert all of this stuff over back here and you didn't care about the extra chassis adjustments and all that, you would be able to do that no problem with the 22. So you can choose what wheelbase you want. All the rest of the stuff is the same. You can buy all these pod parts, everything, if you wanted to change them. But quite honestly, I wouldn't see any need to do anything like that. We're going for the 22 to 23. If I wouldn't have got such a good deal on the used 23, I probably would have never got it. But with my used 22, I found that I didn't get everything that I needed with the kit. So I was missing a lot of parts. And the 23 came on sale. He had a lot of parts. And, I'm still getting Xray parts and stuff, of course. Xray parts are not cheap. They really aren't. Some of the little parts can get quite expensive, especially if you want to have a collection of spacers and screws and all this other stuff. So to me, it was just as good of a value to pay another $250 to go to a different roller and then have all of these interchangeable parts between the two, and then stick with one of the platforms, obviously the 23, and then I would be able to share all the parts between the two. Now, if we take a look here at Xray's product announcement of the 2024, you can again see, you know, the real kind of on-road cars that these guys race with, and not so much the GT12 type of a deal. The little bit of pictures and everything, and there's what the car looks like. I forgot to mention that if you look at these front braces here in the front of the car, they actually changed this going from the 22 to the 23. They did a double stack position here where you have a set of standoffs here, and then you can secure another front brace to stiffen up the front end on that. So I've got the double front brace on mine just because it's there and it adds a little bit of weight, and I don't really notice a whole lot of difference. Now, what you can see is that I don't run any side braces or anything like that, worrying about chassis flex and stiffness. Like, obviously, when you get into running these super fast cars, you're going to need all of that kind of stuff. So that's a pretty good thing there. Now, one thing with the center shock they did over the 22 when they went to the 23 was since they lowered everything down, they needed to raise the center shock up. So they moved it up to the top here, of course, and then we actually added a little bit of spacer in there, and then they also added a spacer here so that way your shock can clear your battery. So, as well as the side damper tubes, since they moved them up on top, you're able to change those up and down as well and add spacers underneath those. So you can kind of change, you know, the amount of damping and stuff that you have. Again, stuff we probably don't need on a GT12 car, but it's all available if you ever want to like try it out or keep on going. Now, here's the US edition, which talks about the chassis that comes with it, as well as 1 degree front kingpins. The great thing that's awesome about these that you don't have to fuss with on the Xray cars is the front kingpins. Even though they're $31 or $32 a piece, they are built with the built-in camber, so they go from like 0.5 all the way up to whatever 2 or whatever, and they basically just screw right in, and you put like different washers and spacers in there to like set your ride height and front droop and everything. But it's one less thing on the setup station that you have to worry about. They're marked clearly with like dots, 2 dot, 3 dot, 4 dot. They use that to represent their degrees. So it's super easy to go ahead and change and know exactly what you are getting. So here they talk about their new built 3D bumper, which this one, of course, is built by Xray. So, you know, some people might want to get that. I'm pretty happy with the one that I have here. You know, maybe down the road if this one gets trashed, but it's TPU 3D printed. I don't really see a whole reason that it's ever going to go bad on me. They say that it's going to create more grip and help support the front bodies, which of course is going to help, you know, if you're running the super fast classes and not something like a GT12. They also did extend the top lower arm here. Basically, if you take a look here on my kit, it's the piece that's underneath those right there, and it's pretty cool setup. Like underneath that is where like your ride height shims go and all that kind of stuff, and it's pretty nice, man. Like it's really easy to like deal with. Now they're saying that since this is a little bit wider, it's going to eliminate the need for like axle shims, and of course it's going to help things out a little bit. Now it'd be pretty nice because the maximum width on the front that you could run, I believe it's the same as the rear, which is like 172. Usually I'm like around 167, 168, and that's with putting a few shims in there. But, you know, with these little tires that are on here and all these pan cars, you basically end up like tightening and backing off the wheel nut enough so that the thing starts to spin. So you can see that I've still got probably 1.5 millimeters of axle sticking out there. So I'd still be able to, you know, shim this wheel out more and still get the wheel nut on if I wanted to. But, you know, it'd be nice to have that stuff built in. So who knows, maybe that's something that will change on this car in the future. They do talk about a new thinner side braces that we talked about before. And really, again, this is going to be all about the people that are racing these at the higher end, faster level, and not really, I don't think, very helpful for a GT12 racer. Here's the side spring rotators that I was talking about. Now, these typically what this is like a composite piece with like a set screw that goes into it. So it's nice that it will be all one metal piece. I'll definitely be buying these when these are available, just because it's one less point of failure. Like I said, with your springs on here, even though, the dampening springs don't really get messed up a whole lot, they can kind of like wear out that carbon there. And if Xray sees, they also say that it can help hold your tweak a little bit better. So if Xray says that they're doing it, I would probably just go ahead and replace it, just because that should be a cheap option. And there are those side retainers in action that we're talking about. Now, they also are including some different things, like different softer side springs, which are going to be the silvers. I have the golds in there, but I actually am going to be putting the silvers on the car. I've always ran it with the gold side damping springs. And then they're also giving you the 4-dot spring for your center, which is the stiffest spring that they have now, because people are just getting faster and wanting more reactive cars. And that's pretty much what that center shock is going to do. Currently, I'm running the 3-dot inside there, just because I think it makes it a little bit easier for me to drive and a little bit more forgiving. Talking about that, of course, with the shock absorber, this center shock that they build out right here is a freaking nice shock, man. I mean, it all goes together just like perfectly. So you really cannot beat that shock. One thing they did change here again is the front bumper. You'd be able to change that if you want to. And that's, the carbon bumper that actually will go on to their 3D fit, printed bumper. They're saying it's going to be a perfect fit. Protects the chassis and crashes and all that kind of stuff. You can see how the older design kind of looked like that. And yeah, for sure, that's definitely what we got going on there. And, I don't know. Mine, quite honestly, mine actually looks exactly like that. So maybe that is just a front bumper that I happened to get and I don't know, wasn't supposed to have or something, but there it is. That looks just like that picture right there. So not sure what's up with that. And then this is just going over all of the included stuff that's going on. So that's pretty much a wrap up on like the 22, 23, 24. You can always let me know if you have any questions about anything. For GT12 racing, I don't think you can go wrong with any of the platforms. If you want a new kit and you can get a 2024, building an Xray kit from the ground up is a really good time. It's super nice. And if you get a used one, you're going to have to tear it down and rebuild it anyway. Trust me, if you've watched my last video where, you hear me complaining and whining about 12 scale, how crazy it is. The cars are easy to work on. It's just you're really always working on these cars. That's the thing about them, but it's super fun. I absolutely love it. So hopefully that helps some of you guys out. Got any questions, again, let me know. And we'll be doing some racing this weekend with this little baby. We'll probably be doing some videos about building some stuff up. I got to replace the servo. I got to build a couple ball diffs. Yeah, and we'll be ready to go. So talk to you guys later. Peace.